Finally, it's time for another best of list, and today I'm exploring the best horror films of 1984. This list wasn't the easiest I've made, as it was actually hard to fill out the list with 10 movies that deserve such a mentioning. I'm not gonna say that all of these 10 films are worth seeking out, but it does include some good stuff that more people should check out, and the number one on the list is one of the best horror films of all time. So, here we go. Here is my top 10 horror movies of 1984. First off, we have the sci-fi horror film Mutant, starring Wings Hauser. Mutant is an okay 80s B-movie, and Hauser in this time period fits quite well into a movie like this. It deals with toxic waste, a year before it became the norm of zombie movies with the return of the living dead. Mutant has some cool makeup and special effects, but is a tad bit too low on the gore factor. Mutant isn't a great horror film, but is an easy and enjoyable film to put on while you sit back and relax. It's nothing groundbreaking or anything, but due to lack of other great movies this year, it does get a place on this list. This might be the only time Monster Dog has ever been put on a best of list. Monster Dog is a film by the legendary Italian director Claudio Fragasso, starring Alice Cooper, who had just quit alcohol and been dropped by his record label. Cooper saw this as a way to get back on his feet and signed on to do the film with understanding that it will only be released in Spain. Thankfully for the rest of us, the movie did see releases outside of that country, as this is a very fun B-movie. It's a bizarre movie and is not put that well together, but as a so bad is good piece of cinema, it does work. It also had 2 songs from Cooper, one extremely cheesy one called Identity Crisis, and a ballad of sorts that gives a very haunting feeling called See Me in the Mirror. Monster Dog is insane, and I can't help liking it a bit more than I probably should. At number 8 we have the British Christmas slasher movie Don't Open Till Christmas, which was actually one of 2 Christmas-related horror films on this list. Even though it's filmed in England, it is very much the same type of slashers as the American ones. It is a sleazy film made to show off violence and nudity, but hey, nothing's wrong with that, right? I saw someone online call it a British Christmas version of the New York Ripper, and while that's the best line to ever sell the movie, I would like to add that it has some boring parts to it that doesn't make it quite the classic it could have been. It is however a fun film for fans of slasher and Christmas horror films, so if you haven't seen this one yet, then give it a go. At number 7 we have another sci-fi horror film, this one being based on a Stephen King novel. Firestarter is perhaps best known for having Drew Barrymore in it, and basically being a mediocre adaptation. What sucks about this production is that John Carpenter was originally attached to do the film, and I can only dream of how much better this film would have been with him on board. I am not a great fan of this film, but looking at it objectively, it is not that bad, and does deserve a mention on this list, especially due to the casting of George C. Scott as John Rainbird. Coming in at number 6 we have another British production with the beautiful movie The Company of Wolves by Neil Jordan. This is a very unique take on the werewolf genre, so if you are a fan of the furry monsters and want something different, then this might be something for you. It is however not a straight horror film though, as it goes a bit more into the fantasy genre. Most of the story takes place in the 19th century, so if you hate movies set in that time period, then this will not be a film for you. If you do like the idea of a more artsy werewolf film, then check this one out. Night of the Comet is a movie I finally saw for the first time this year, and I have to wonder why I haven't gotten around to this film on an earlier stage, as this one was quite unique and cool. The world this takes place in is a world that has seen a passing comet turning 95% of all humans into dust or being turned into cannibalistic mutants. This was done by director Tom Eberhardt, who also had a spot on last year's list with his 1983 effort Soul Survivor. I enjoyed the world they created on this film, and the characters are all likable. Did not care that much for the military aspect of the plot though, but Night of the Comet is definitely an underrated 80s horror film that should get more praise than what it has received so far. At number 4 we have the second Christmas movie on this list with Silent Night, Deadly Night. This is one of the many 80s serial killer movies where we follow a demented killer and get some glimpses of why he has become the way he has. It is a very mean and twisted movie with enough violence and nudity to make horror fans happy, while at the same time be controversial enough to get banned and cut to pieces in several countries in the world upon release. Silent Night, Deadly Night would surprisingly enough get 4 sequels to it, most of them being simply retitling and having very little to do with this original film. If you like the 80s serial killer movies that don't just go for 100% of hack and slash, then Silent Night, Deadly Night should be a movie for you. Okay, I'll admit that for some strange reason I have a soft spot for the Children of the Corn series, but I'll stand by my choice that the first one is a good movie that deserves the number 3 spot on this list. This first out of 9 movies, with most likely more to come in the future, is the best one out of the bunch. The film sees a small town get overtaken by all the children as they slaughter down everyone who is over 18 in the name of their god, he who walks behind the rose. The premise is great and the leading actors Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton does a great job, while some of the kids are very memorable, including the Red Fury himself, Courtney Gaines as Malachi. In the mood for killer kids, then Children of the Corn is the movie for you. At number 2 we have my favorite movie in the Jason Voorhees series, Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. Yeah, we have another group of teens that go out to the cabin in Crystal Lake to have fun by drinking alcohol, smoking weed and having sex. All that good stuff. This fourth film doesn't stray much from what we have already gotten with the 3 first film, but somehow this movie manages to just be a tad bit better. One aspect to it is that it has a new hero, a young Tommy Jarvis played by Corey Feldman, and the ending with him versus Jason is the best in the entire franchise. It would be an acceptable way of ending the entire franchise, but of course the idea of making more money made the studio laugh at the idea of not bringing Jason back to the horror-hungry cinemagoers of the 1980s. The movie also has the forever gorgeous Judy Aronson in it, so what more could you ask for? Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter is everything you could wish for in the Jason Voorhees movie, and I love this film. There is only one movie from this year that I consider to be a bit better though. And at number 1 we of course have A Nightmare on Elm Street. This masterpiece of horror cinema by the great mind of Wes Craven would change everything for horror and could be the exact moment when 80s horror went away from the regular slasher fare into the more fantastique that would dominate the second half of the decade. The Freddy Krueger character was such a unique anti-hero that would actually translate into pop culture of the 80s, a bizarre accomplishment for a child-murdering horror character. I can't imagine any horror fans not having seen this movie by now, and have understanding for why this movie is so great, unless you're a teenager of today, but if you actually happen to have never seen the Freddy Krueger movies, then what are you waiting for? This is not only the best horror film of 1984, but also one of the best horror movies of all time. So there we have it, the top 10 horror movies of 1984. As mentioned, this is not an easy list to put together for me, so I'm curious to hear what films you think deserve a spot on the list, and which ones I should have removed. The comment section is there for a reason, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this year in horror. This also marks the halfway point of the 80s, and by looking at what's been released in 1985, the list for that year shouldn't take me that long to put together. So if you like this type of list, then make sure you subscribe, as I will be bringing more of this in the near future. Thank you very much for watching.